This is Stuart. I'm with Marvin of Drew Estate Cigars. Marvin, why don't you tell me a little bit about the history of the company?
Sure, Stu. Our company is Drew Estate Cigar Company. We began our adventure as a tiny little kiosk in the World Trade Center Mall. This was back in 1995. And from there, we created our own house blend just for our little cart. And it was the size of a hot dog cart right in the World Trade Center Mall.
Right in the mall.
Right inside the mall. And pretty soon, other stores in Lower Manhattan were asking for these cigars. They were called La Vieja Habana. And we were having them rolled in a tiny little place on 28th Street and 6th Avenue. It was called La Rosa Cigars. And pretty soon, other stores in Lower Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, Long Island, they started asking us, hey, where can we get these? So we started selling to them. We eventually were unable to meet the demand of the market, so we ended up having our cigars made at a factory in Esteli, Nicaragua, which is the heart of the Nicaraguan cigar industry. It's a small town about 2 hours north of Managua. Well, we kept on growing our company, but my parents are from, my parents are, my dad's a retired plumber, my mom was a homemaker. They came here to this country with nothing but the shirt on their backs.
Weren't they originally from Poland and then Russia?
Yes. Both my parents were born at the outset of World War II. Both their families thankfully fled the Nazis when they came in. My parents were both babies. My mom fled into Russia. My dad's family ended up fleeing. The Russian army picked them up, and my grandfather was sent to a forced labor camp in Siberia as a shoemaker. That's what he did for a living. So it was a very tough life, difficult life. They went through.
So you came up from the streets and from some hard labor,
not
some
me. I
class.
wasn't, but we were, growing up. My dad was a ditch digger when I was a baby, and then he taught himself to become a plumber.
You had no pampered lifestyle as well.
Oh no,
yeah.
no.
Okay.
We didn't own a car until I was, I'd say about 12 years old. It was our first automobile, and I was sent to work when I was 14 years old. I was playing 13 years old. I was playing stickball in the streets. My dad saw that I was hanging out with a couple of kids that he didn't trust too much. So he one day came to the schoolyard. I'm at bat at the stickball court. He goes, "Come with me." And I was like, "Dad, give me a minute. I'm at the plate." He runs over to me, grabs me by the ear, takes me to the cigar shop. It was a smoke shop across the street from the school, and he dumps me over there. Looks at the two guys who own the store, and he goes, "This is Bob and Reuven. This is Marvin. What do you want him to do?" And I started sweeping the floors, and eventually I ran the lotto machine and the cigar humidor right in front.
So your history with cigars go back to
well, I wouldn't
early
say,
teenage years.
Sure, but I would say that the real fundamental start of my cigar career began right after college. My fraternity brother and I, Jonathan Drew and I, we started spending our summers in the Hamptons. We ran a share house, basically, and we would hang out during the summers and grill hot dogs, hang out at the deck of our pool, and watch the girls in their bikinis while smoking cigars all summer, And we just became fanatics about tobacco and cigars. And we were no different than you guys out there. Just loved to smoke cigars, loved trying new blends, and became infatuated with the fact that these cigars are made completely by hand, and they take years to cure, ferment, and the fact that it takes so long and there's so much care put into them, it shows and shines through in the final product.
Like a good wine.
No different.
Being from New York, you have your
very
wineries
similar
there.
In terms of the passion, Stu, in terms of the commitment to excellence that winemakers and cigar makers put into their product.
Beautiful. So now fast forward to you're at the World Trade Center, you're selling cigars out of a little kiosk.
Yeah, so we opened up our kiosk. We had an opportunity to open up a kiosk in the World Trade Center Mall. It was in '95. And like I said, within a couple of years, we had our blend, our brand La Vieja Habana all over the country. They're now being produced in Nicaragua. And we were traveling now. My business partner Jonathan was traveling back and forth to Nicaragua, and the problem is that, you know, like I said, we're not wealthy guys. Jonathan's parents were antique dealers. My parents, like I said, were, you know, poor people, and we didn't have the money to grow our business, so we were always struggling and always behind the eight ball. And you know, our parents saw this, and you know, my dad had just paid off his mortgage on his house a few months before we were together one day, and he's hanging out with Jonathan and I, and he sees we're just depressed as hell. And he looked at us, he goes, "What do you need, boys?" He goes, we were like, "We need money from somewhere." And I didn't even think my dad was even thinking in the same wavelength.
You were just sharing business questions and just sharing what's going on.
With my dad.
Yeah.
And he basically said, all right, he went to the bank, he took out a mortgage, maxed out on his equity of his house, handed it to us, and said, all right, go follow your dream. So we went to the 1998 trade show, knocked it out of the park, placed our orders, and then about a month later, Hurricane Mitch came through Nicaragua.
And most of the Caribbean.
Correct.
Yeah.
But for Nicaragua and Esteli in particular, it was a difficult time. The factories were closed on average for about a month. And when the factory opened, our manufacturer had a decision to make. He could make our cigars, or he could produce his cigars, which were hot on the market. And he's a businessman. He made his cigars for himself. And we didn't get a box of cigars for about 8 months. And here we are. We went through all of our savings, all the money that my parents had lent us. And Jonathan's parents also mortgaged their home. And now here we are broke. And we couldn't afford to pay our employees anymore at a certain point. And I said to them, we were all in our late 20s, all bachelors, and I said to them, hey, you have a choice. You can either take another job, can't afford to keep you guys until we have something going on, or you can move in with me. And I had 5 or 6 guys living with me on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, one toilet.
You got 5 or 6 guys stacked up in a little apartment.
Stacked up, sleeping bags, eating ramen noodles. I didn't have enough money for a subway token. I would jog from Brooklyn all the way up to the Upper West Side of Manhattan, about 6.5 miles one way.
Best shape you've ever been in.
I was in pretty good shape, but you know, we were struggling, and it was a tough time. And one day, this was right around Thanksgiving, my consigliere, let's call it, Paul Sessler, he was our tax attorney, and he basically called us into his offices, and he said, you know, boys, it's over. And we just had a blank stare looking at him, and he just basically said, you have no money coming in, you can't afford to pay your rent, you can't afford to pay me, you're not paying your employees, you're out of business. You need to declare bankruptcy so I can protect the two of you. And we looked at each other and we couldn't believe just the finality of what he said.
He's looking out for your best interest, but you've got this dream that you really want to pursue.
Correct, Stu. So that night, we took our last 20 bucks. We went to Heartland Brewery in Union Square in Manhattan, had a couple of beers, and we looked at each other and said, is this it? Is this where our dream and passion is going to? And, excuse me a second.
No, you go right ahead. You don't want to let that go out.
We knew that this couldn't be the end. And, you know, we needed to get our hands on some cash quick. And we decided that instead of having a manufacturer make cigars for us, that we were going to take our matters into our own hands, and that we were going to become cigar manufacturers ourselves. And we needed some cash, and being a guy from Brooklyn, New York, growing up on the streets of New York, if you really need to get a hold of some cash, there are guys you can go to. So,
just a quick question. It wasn't one of my uncles, was it?
I don't know who your uncle is.
Okay, go ahead.
Was he on the south side of Brooklyn?
Well, you never know.
All right, you never know. Stu nuts. So